The storm rolled overhead Seattle, like a slow confession, dark clouds pressing against the skyline, swallowing the last traces of daylight. The rain fell in endless sheets, a rhythm that blurred everything: the neon lights, the traffic, the faces of strangers passing under umbrellas. Maya Rivera didn't bother with one. She walked fast through the wet streets of Pioneer Square, her coat clinging to her body, her hair plastered against her cheeks. She was late again, another closing shift at the diner, another night she didn't want to think about. The sidewalks shimmered with reflections, red, blue, gold. The smell of coffee, smoke, and sea salt mixed in the air. Somewhere nearby, a jazz saxophone cried through an open bar window. Maya adjusted her bag, ignoring the ache in her legs. She had promised herself she wouldn't live like this forever, working until midnight, sleeping in a rented room that smelled of someone else's dreams. But promises were easy in the daylight. The sound came suddenly, a crash, a car door slamming. Then, a scream. Her head snapped toward the alley behind the diner. A man stumbled out, gripping his side, blood already staining his white shirt. Behind him, 2 others emerged from the shadows, their movements sharp and rehearsed. She froze, her pulse hammering. The injured man turned toward her, eyes wild, desperate, but not afraid. His voice cut through the rain. "Go back inside." She didn't. One of the men behind him raised a gun. Everything happened in a blink. The gunfire, the smell of cordite, the echo bouncing off wet brick. The man lunged toward her, tackling her to the ground as the bullet shattered the glass above them. Rain splashed against her face. Her breath caught. His body covered hers, heavy, trembling. When he looked down at her, she saw his eyes, dark gray, like the storm above them. He was bleeding, but his gaze was steady, almost defiant. "Don't move," he whispered. The 2 gunmen hesitated at the alley's mouth, realizing they'd drawn attention. Voices shouted from the main street. Someone had heard. Tires screeched. The men fled. The stranger lay there a moment longer, rain mixing with the blood on his jaw. Then he pushed himself up, grimacing. Maya sat up too, breath shaking. "You're hurt," he cut her off. "Don't call anyone. Are you insane? You're bleeding out." He stood, swaying slightly. "You didn't see me. You understand?" She rose to her feet, her fear shifting to anger. "You saved me. That makes you my problem." He turned, his expression unreadable. The streetlight caught his face. Sharp features, soaked hair, a scar running just beneath his jaw. His voice dropped, calm but dangerous. "No, Hirida, I'm not your problem." He took a step closer. "I'm the reason you're still alive. That means from now on, you don't make decisions without thinking about me first." The words made her freeze. The rain seemed to pause midair. "What?" she whispered. He leaned in, his breath warm despite the cold. "From now on, you cry only for me." Her pulse skipped. His eyes held hers, something between command and confession. Then he turned, disappearing into the rain, leaving only the echo of his voice and the scent of danger behind him. Maya stood there for a long time, the storm soaking through her clothes, the city blurring around her. When she finally stumbled back inside the diner, the other waitress, Jess, gasped. "Jesus, Maya, you look like you saw a ghost." She forced a shaky laugh. "Maybe I did." But when she looked out through the rain-streaked window, she saw him again, standing under the flickering streetlight, watching. He raised 2 fingers in a silent salute before vanishing into the dark. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flash of the gun, the way he'd thrown himself between her and the bullet, the impossible calm in his voice. Who was he? And why had his words felt like a promise and a threat at once? The next day, the rain hadn't stopped. Seattle felt heavier, slower. The diner buzzed with whispers. Someone said there'd been a shooting nearby. Others said it was gang-related. Maya tried to ignore it. She worked through the motions, pouring coffee, serving eggs, smiling for strangers. But when she stepped outside for her break, a black car idled across the street. Tinted windows, no plates. She froze. Then slowly the driver's window rolled down. He was there. The man from the alley, dry now, wearing a dark suit, his hair slicked back, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. The blood was gone, but not the authority in his posture. She approached the car before she could think better of it. "You shouldn't be here." "I told you," he said calmly. "You don't make decisions without thinking of me." Her voice rose. "Who are you?" He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a folded napkin, the same brand from her diner. Written on it, in careful handwriting, "Maya Rivera. 10 p.m. Your shift ends." Her breath hitched. "You followed me?" "I protected you," he corrected softly. "Now I need you to do something for me." She shook her head. "No, whatever this is, I want nothing to do with it." He leaned forward, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "The men who came after me think you saw something you shouldn't have. They know your name, your face, your address. Whether you like it or not, you're already part of this." Her heart dropped. "What do you mean?" He held her gaze. "It means you don't go home tonight. You come with me, or you die before morning." The rain drummed harder against the car roof. Maya stood there, paralyzed, torn between fear and the strange magnetic pull he carried. He opened the passenger door. Choose. And for reasons she couldn't name, maybe instinct, maybe something darker, she got in. The door closed. The city disappeared behind them as the car slipped into the storm. Neither spoke. The rain filled the silence between them. Finally he said, "My name is Alejandro Cruz." She turned to him. "That's supposed to mean something to me." His jaw tightened. "It will." They drove until the skyline vanished, until only the sound of the sea and the rain against the glass remained. When he parked outside a waterfront warehouse, he turned to her. His voice softened, almost tender. "I didn't want this for you, Maya, but fate chose poorly." He reached out, brushed a drop of rain from her cheek with his thumb. "From now on," he murmured, "you're under my protection. And that comes with a price." Her breath trembled. "What price?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides both promise and danger. "Your trust. And your tears." Then he stepped out into the rain, leaving the passenger door open for her to follow. Maya hesitated, staring at his silhouette framed by lightning, at the man who had pulled her into a storm bigger than either of them. She could have run, but something deeper than fear kept her there. Because when he said, "From now on, you cry only for me," she wasn't sure if it was a threat or a prophecy. The rain never truly stopped in Seattle. It only changed its mood. Sometimes it whispered, sometimes it wept. Tonight, it clung to the air like grief that wouldn't leave, soft and unrelenting. The warehouse by the waterfront was silent, except for the sound of the waves colliding with the wooden pylons below. Inside, shadows breathed between the concrete walls and the faint hum of generators. The air smelled of oil, salt, and something faintly metallic, like secrets sealed in rust. Maya stood near the doorway, shivering, her soaked clothes clinging to her skin. Across the room, Alejandro Cruz was on the phone, his voice low, controlled, the kind of tone that made men obey without question. She could only hear fragments. They saw her face. "No, she's not going anywhere. If they move again, I'll know before sunrise." He hung up, slid the phone into his coat, and turned toward her. "You're cold," he said. "You think?" She shot back, hugging herself. "You dragged me into the middle of nowhere after nearly getting me killed, and now you're worried about the weather?" His expression didn't change. He walked past her, poured whiskey into a glass from a decanter on a metal desk, and handed it to her. "Drink." She hesitated, then took it. The heat of it burned down her throat, chased away the trembling. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. He leaned against the desk, watching her like a puzzle he already knew how to solve. "You saw something you shouldn't have. That means you're leverage." "Leverage? For who?" "For me." He said it so casually it made her skin prickle. "I don't understand," she said, voice tight. "Who are those men?" He took a slow sip of his drink before answering. "They work for the Herrera family, the ones I used to work for." Maya frowned. "Used to?" Alejandro's eyes darkened. "I was their enforcer, their shield, their ghost when they needed someone to disappear. until I realized I was disappearing too. He looked away for a moment, the rain light catching the scar along his jaw. I left, took something they didn't want me to take, information, evidence that could destroy them, and when I did, they sent their dogs. And I was, what, just standing in the wrong place? He met her gaze again, and this time there was something almost human beneath the steel. There are no wrong places, Maya. Only wrong people. You just happened to cross paths with the kind of man who changes your life without asking first. She exhaled sharply. You think that's romantic or something? His smile was faint, humorless. No, it's cruel. He stepped closer until the distance between them hummed with unspoken electricity. But now you're under my protection. Whether you like it or not, Maya's heart thudded painfully. Protection sounds a lot like control. Sometimes they're the same thing. The way he said it made her chest tighten. Not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of how sure he sounded. Hours passed. The rain softened, turning into mist that blurred the windows. Alejandro sat at a table, papers spread before him, maps, photographs, lists of names marked with red ink. Maya couldn't help but notice one name circled twice, Carlos Herrera. She leaned forward slightly. That's who you're after. He didn't look up. He's after me. You want revenge? He finally met her eyes. No, I want peace. Revenge is the lie we tell ourselves to justify the damage we already planned to do. The silence stretched. The clock ticked. The rain breathed. She studied him quietly. His precision, his stillness. He looked like a man sculpted by war and waiting for the moment he could finally stop. Fighting, but something about the way he said her name earlier, the softness in Maya, felt like a crack in his armor. You saved me, she said. Why? Alejandro looked down, his fingers tracing the edge of a photo. You looked like someone I once couldn't save. Her stomach twisted. Someone you loved? He didn't answer. His silence said enough. She turned away, unsure why that answer stung her. By morning, the rain had thinned into a drizzle. The warehouse was alive with quiet motion, men moving boxes, whispering in Spanish, avoiding eye contact with Maya. They all nodded to Alejandro with a mix of respect and fear. One of them, a tall man with a shaved head and a gun under his jacket, approached and said, Jefe, the Herrera scouts were spotted near the docks. They're searching the city, Alejandro nodded. Double the lookout. And burn the route maps. If they find her name on one, I'll kill every last one of them. Maya felt the words hit like cold air. Her name, when the man left, she confronted him. You told them my name? His tone sharpened. No, but they'll find it if I don't act fast. She stepped closer, anger overriding her fear. This isn't protection, Alejandro. This is prison. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. You could have just let me go that night, she said. You didn't have to drag me into your mess. He stood abruptly, closing the distance between them. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to bring death to your doorstep? You were there, Maya. You saw. The second you did, there was no going back. The only way you stay alive now is if you stay near me. Her voice trembled. And what happens when you don't want to protect me anymore? He took her hand before she could pull away. His touch was warm, rough, deliberate. Then you'll already know how to protect yourself. She froze, heart stuttering. He released her hand and turned toward the window, his tone softening. There's a safe house on Bainbridge Island. I'll take you there tonight. No one knows about it. And you? I'll stay until they stop looking. Maya hesitated, watching the way his shoulders slumped slightly, like the weight of everything he carried was finally pressing down. For the first time, he looked less like a cartel boss, and more like a man searching for absolution he'd never find. That night, they drove through the fog. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by the quiet hum of the ferry cutting through the dark water. Maya stood at the deck, her hair blowing in the cold wind, staring at the reflection of the moon broken across the waves. Alejandro joined her, standing just close enough that she could feel his warmth. He didn't speak for a while. Then softly, "Do you trust me?" She turned to him, eyes narrowing. "No," he nodded. "Good. That means you're still alive." She almost smiled at that. Then, in the quiet between the waves, she asked, "Why me?" He met her gaze, his eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "Because you didn't run." And for a fleeting second, she wished she had. When they reached Bainbridge, the safe house waited. A small, secluded cabin surrounded by towering fir trees. The rain had turned into mist again, wrapping everything in silver. Alejandro opened the door, letting her step inside first. The air smelled of cedar and salt. "Stay here," he said. "Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door for anyone but me." Maya hesitated. "How will I know if it's you?" He smiled faintly, stepping closer until his breath brushed her ear. "You'll know," he whispered, "because I'm the only one who'll ever say your name like it's a secret." Then he was gone, his footsteps vanishing into the rain. Maya stood by the window long after the taillights disappeared into the fog. She didn't know whether she'd been rescued or claimed. But when she touched her cheek, she realized the rain had stopped. And yet she was still crying, for him, and she hated herself for it. The fog hung thick over Bainbridge Island, rolling in from the sound like a living thing. The world beyond the trees was muted, birds silent, waves whispering against the shore. It was the kind of silence that felt like waiting. Inside the cabin, Maya woke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Her heart leapt, breath caught halfway between hope and dread. She grabbed the small kitchen knife she'd kept by the nightstand. Then she heard it. 3 soft knocks. A pause. 2 more. Alejandro's signal. She exhaled, lowering the blade. When she opened the door, he stood there, soaked again from the rain, his dark coat dripping on the wooden steps. He looked exhausted, but not broken. "You came back?" she said quietly. "I said I would." He stepped inside, his presence filling the small space. She caught the scent of rain, smoke, and something faintly metallic. Blood. "You're hurt," she said, noticing the crimson stain spreading down his sleeve. He brushed it off. "Not mine." Maya stared at him, half afraid to ask. "Then whose?" He didn't answer. He walked past her, setting a leather satchel on the table. When he opened it, she glimpsed folders, photos, and stacks of cash bound with black bands. "What is that?" she asked. "Insurance," he said. "Everything the Herreras think they still own." She stepped closer. Among the photos were faces. Men in suits, uniforms, politicians. "You're keeping evidence on them?" "I'm keeping leverage," he corrected. "If I go down, they go with me." Maya crossed her arms. "And me? Where do I fit in all this?" His eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "You're the only thing they can't buy or threaten." She shook her head. "That's not protection, Alejandro. That's another kind of cage." He leaned back against the table, his expression softening. "You think I don't know that? Every choice I make is a chain, but you remind me there's still air outside the smoke." The room went still. Rain tapped lightly against the windows. "Don't say things like that," she whispered. "Why?" "Because I don't want to care what happens to you." He smiled faintly, sadness tucked in the corners. "It's too late for that, mi alma." Her chest tightened. "Don't call me that." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until she could feel the warmth of him through her skin. "You think if you stop hearing it, you'll stop feeling it?" She wanted to step back, but her body betrayed her. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one rising inside her. Fear, anger, longing, all tangled into one unbearable ache. "Why me?" she asked again, her voice trembling. "You could have found anyone. You could have left me there that night." He looked at her with something raw and almost broken. "Because the moment I saw you, I remembered who I was before they turned me into this." She searched his face for the lie, but found none, and that terrified her more than anything. The following days blurred together. Rain, fog, silence. Alejandro rarely slept. He made calls at odd hours, spoke in languages she didn't recognize. Men came and went from the edge of the woods, delivering things in the dark. Maya tried to keep her distance, but the cabin was small and the air between them electric. Every time he passed by, she felt his gravity, like the pull of something inevitable. One night, she found him outside, standing shirtless under the rain, his back scarred like a map of old pain. He didn't turn when she spoke. "You'll get sick." "I've been sick for years," he murmured. She stepped beside him, shivering under the cold. "Then stop bleeding for ghosts." He looked at her then, eyes gleaming in the rain. "You think that's what I am? A ghost? I think you're trying to be one." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You don't know what I've done, Maya." "Then tell me." He hesitated, then nodded, as if the weight had grown too heavy to carry alone. "When I worked for the Herreras, they made me clean their mistakes. People who talked, people who didn't. One of them was a journalist. Her name was Lucia. She had proof of everything. I was supposed to silence her." Maya's breath caught. "Did you?" Alejandro's jaw clenched, his voice lowered to a whisper. "She was pregnant. I didn't know until I saw her. I told her to run, but they found her before I could get her out." The rain fell harder, like the sky itself was listening. Maya swallowed. "What happened to her?" "They buried her where the sound of the sea would cover the screams." He closed his eyes. "She was my wife." The world went still. Only the rain moved. Maya stepped closer, heart pounding. "That's why you left. That's why I can't." His voice trembled for the first time. "Every night I see her face. And when I saw you, the way you didn't run, the way you looked at me, I thought maybe fate was giving me one last chance to protect something pure." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't get to decide who I am to you." He looked at her, anguish flickering in his expression. "No, but I can decide who I won't lose next." Maya turned away, tears mixing with the rain. "You can't save me to atone for her." "I'm not trying to save you," he said, stepping closer. "I'm trying to stop the world from taking you too." His hand brushed her cheek, a touch that felt like both a wound and a prayer. She didn't pull away. "From now on," he whispered. "You cry only for me," her breath caught. "You already said that." He nodded, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "Because you didn't listen the first time." And then his lips met hers, slow, desperate, rain-soaked and trembling. It wasn't gentle. It was the kind of kiss that confessed everything words couldn't. Fear, guilt, longing, surrender. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were darker than the sky. "They're coming for me soon. When they do, you run," Maya's voice broke. "I'm not leaving you." "You don't get to decide that," he said. "You think you own my tears, but you don't own my choice." He stared at her, something fierce and pained flickering in his eyes. "Then your choice will kill you." "Maybe it will," she whispered, "but at least it'll be mine." Later that night, she found him burning papers in the fireplace, names, photos, pieces of a life he was trying to erase. When she asked what he was doing, he simply said, "Making sure there's nothing left for them to find." But as the last page turned to ash, Maya saw what he'd hidden beneath the flames. A single photograph that he refused to burn. It was Lucia, smiling, pregnant. Maya looked away, her throat tight. Alejandro caught her expression, then said quietly, "She'd have been your age now." Something in her heart cracked, not for him, not even for the woman in the photo, but for the unbearable truth that even monsters could love deeply, and sometimes, that was the cruelest curse of all. That night, while he slept on the couch for the first time since arriving, Maya stood at the window staring at the sea. The rain had stopped. The world was quiet. She whispered to the dark, "If you can hear me, Lucia, I'll make sure he remembers." Behind her, Alejandro stirred in his sleep, a faint sound escaping his lips. A name, not hers. Lucia. Maya closed her eyes, and for the first time, she realized that loving a man like him meant sharing his ghosts. It meant becoming one. The wind carried the sound of the tide through the fir trees, a low and constant breath that made the night feel alive. It was near midnight on Bainbridge Island, and the cabin's single lamp flickered, throwing long, restless shadows across the walls. Maya couldn't sleep. Not since she'd heard him whisper her name in the dark. Not hers, not Lucia's, but hers. And something inside her had shifted. She stood by the window again, watching the horizon. The rain had not yet returned, but the sky was heavy with the promise of it. The silence was too clean, too absolute, the kind of silence that comes before the storm remembers its purpose. Then she heard it. The faint crunch of gravel under tires. Headlights cutting briefly through the trees. Her blood turned to ice. She turned toward the living room. "Alejandro," she whispered. He was already awake. In a single motion, he sat up, gun in hand, eyes sharp even in half-light. "How long?" "Just now," she said. A car. He moved to the window, his body tense, the predator inside him awake again. For a moment he didn't breathe. Then quietly, "They found us. What do we do?" He turned to her. "You hide. The basement, under the trap door in the pantry." "No. Maya, I said no." Her voice shook but didn't break. "I'm not hiding while you die for me." His expression softened, even in urgency. "If I fall tonight, it's not for you. It's for the part of me that's still human. You keep that alive." Before she could argue, he pressed his hand to her face, brief, firm, tender. Then he was gone, slipping into the rain-soaked darkness outside. Maya ran to the pantry door but stopped, torn between fear and defiance. Through the small window she could see him, his figure moving low through the mist, merging with the trees. Then the headlights came again, this time closer. Engines, multiple. A convoy. Her hands trembled. She grabbed the revolver he'd left on the table and crouched behind the window, heart pounding. Outside, voices shouted in Spanish, short, clipped commands. "Muévanse. Él está aquí." The first shot cracked through the air, shattering the stillness. The muzzle flash lit up the night for a split second, and she saw him, Alejandro, taking cover behind a stone wall near the edge of the property. His return fire was precise, merciless. But there were too many. She could see them spreading through the trees, black shapes blending into the storm-dark forest. And then she saw the figure stepping out from one of the SUVs. Umbrella, dark coat, silver hair glinting beneath the headlights. Carlos Herrera. Even at a distance, she recognized the authority in his movements, the slow, deliberate calm of a man who had ordered more deaths than he could remember. "Alejandro!" Herrera's voice carried through the rain, smooth, cruel. "You've been hard to find, hermano. And for what? A woman?" He stepped forward, rain streaking across his face like tears carved in steel. "You killed Lucia. You broke the one thing that made me loyal. And now you think you can take what's left of me?" Herrera smiled. "What's left of you is mine." Alejandro fired first. The bullet missed by inches, striking the SUV's mirror. The response was instant. Dozens of rounds shattered the night. Maya ducked instinctively, the glass window exploding above her. She crawled across the floor, the revolver tight in her hand. She could hear Alejandro shouting commands to his men, those loyal enough to follow him into exile. But their numbers were small, 2, maybe 3, against 20. Every instinct in her screamed to stay hidden. But something else, something raw and furious, dragged her toward the door. When she stepped outside, the rain had finally begun to fall, hard and relentless. It soaked her hair, plastered her clothes to her skin. She moved low along the wall, her heart in her throat. She saw him through the haze. Alejandro crouched behind a tree, blood on his shoulder, returning fire. And she saw Herrera's men circling behind him. Without thinking, she raised the revolver and fired. The recoil jolted her entire body, but one of the men fell. Alejandro turned sharply. When he saw her, his expression wasn't anger, it was terror. "Maya, no!" She ignored him, firing again, missed. The return shot hit the ground beside her, throwing dirt into her eyes. He moved faster than she thought possible, grabbing her wrist, pulling her behind the tree just as another bullet tore through where her head had been. He pressed her against the trunk, his breath harsh against her ear. "I told you to stay inside. I told you I don't hide," she hissed back, his jaw clenched. "Then if we die, it's together." Their eyes met. Rain, smoke, fear, and something deeper than both. Then Herrera's voice echoed through the chaos. "You can't protect everyone, Alejandro. That's why she died. That's why this one will too." Alejandro's face hardened. He turned to her. "If he gets close to me, shoot him. Why me?" "Because you're the only one I'd trust to end it." The words tore through her like a blade. "You think I could do that?" He leaned closer, his forehead brushing hers, his voice breaking. "You're the only one who can." He stepped away before she could stop him. The fight moved toward the open clearing. Gunfire flashed between the trees, thunder rumbling above them as if the heavens were watching. Herrera's men fell one by one, but so did Alejandro's. When the last echo faded, only two figures remained standing in the rain: Herrera and Alejandro. They faced each other like two ghosts bound by the same sin. Herrera raised his pistol, eyes cold. "You always wanted to believe you could be forgiven. You were wrong." Alejandro's hand trembled around his weapon. "You killed her. You made me what I am. And still you serve me. Even now," Alejandro's gun faltered. For one horrifying moment, Maya thought he'd believe him, that the years of guilt, of blood, would finally drag him under. Then she saw Herrera aim at his chest. Without thinking, she fired. The shot echoed like thunder. Herrera staggered back, shock flashing in his eyes before he fell into the mud. Alejandro turned, disbelief written across his face. "Maya," her hand trembled, the revolver still smoking. "You said if he got close, I'd end it." He stared at her for a long moment, then lowered his gun. The rain poured between them, washing blood into the earth. Finally, he spoke. "You just changed everything." She took a step forward. "Then take me with you, wherever this goes next." He shook his head. "No, there's no next for me. Only for you," lightning flashed. And for a heartbeat she saw him as he truly was. Broken, beautiful, damned. "Don't do this," she whispered. He stepped closer, cupped her face in his shaking hands. "You deserve a life untouched by blood." Her tears mingled with the rain. "You're part of that life now." He kissed her forehead, soft, final. "Then remember me when the rain falls, because that's when I'll come back to you." And before she could stop him, he turned, gun in hand, walking toward the edge of the clearing, where the last of Herrera's men stirred. She called his name. Once he didn't look back. The next moment, vanished in a flash of thunder and gunfire. When the silence returned, the rain fell harder than ever. She ran to the clearing, breathless, heart-shattering, but there was no body. Only the faint imprint of footsteps leading into the woods, and a trail of blood that disappeared into the fog. He was gone. Whether alive or dead, she couldn't tell. All she knew was that the rain wouldn't stop, and somewhere in its endless rhythm, she could still hear his voice, soft, commanding, forever imprinted on her soul. From now on, you cry only for me. And she did. Morning rose over Bainbridge Island with a stillness that felt unnatural. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean, or pretending to be. Mist hung over the trees like memory refusing to fade. The earth smelled of salt and blood. Maya walked barefoot through the clearing where the final battle had taken place. The soil was soft under her feet, dark with rain. Crows picked at what little remained of the night's chaos, broken branches, shell casings, the scent of smoke. But no body, no Alejandro. She had followed the trail of blood until it vanished by the cliff's edge, where the gray sea collided with stone below. She stood there for hours, listening to the tide, hoping for a sign. There was none. By evening, she'd gone back to the cabin, the place that had been her prison, her sanctuary, and now her mausoleum. The windows still bore the spiderweb cracks from gunfire. The air still smelled faintly of gunpowder and his cologne. Maya sat by the cold fireplace, wrapping her arms around her knees. She tried to cry but couldn't. Her tears had run dry somewhere between the sound of thunder and his last words. "From now on, you cry only for me." She'd promised him that without speaking, and maybe, in her silence, he'd understood. The world outside moved on. The ferries began to cross again. The island returned to its quiet rhythm of fishermen, tourists, and locals who didn't ask too many questions. The police came once, looked around, took a statement. She told them nothing. To them, it was another storm, another unsolved disappearance. But for Maya, it was the moment her world split open. And yet, beneath the grief, there was something else growing, something dangerous, steady, alive. Resolve. 2 months later, Seattle glittered beneath a rare summer sun. The city had shed its rain for now, its skyline a jagged promise against the blue. The chaos of Bainbridge felt far away, like a fever dream she'd barely survived. Maya walked through the Pike Place market, her steps quiet but deliberate. Her hair was shorter now, darker. Sunglasses hid the tiredness in her eyes. She looked like any other woman carrying a grocery bag and a secret, but in her bag wasn't fruit or bread. It was a small, black phone, one that hadn't existed in her life until a week ago. The call had come while she was asleep. Just one message, no number. A voice distorted through static. The Herrera organization is gone, but one name remains. If you want the truth, follow the trail east. Attached was a GPS coordinate, El Paso, Texas. The place where everything had started for Alejandro Cruz. Maya didn't know who had sent it, but the voice, even through distortion, carried a faint echo of something she knew too well. His rhythm. His pause. His restraint. It couldn't be. And yet, she found herself booking a flight that same night, El Paso. The heat hit her like an open hand, dry, relentless, suffocating. It was the opposite of Seattle's melancholy, a world painted in dust and gold. The air tasted of sunburned asphalt and iron. She checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town, where the blinds never opened fully, and no one cared to ask for ID. At dusk, she followed the GPS to a derelict chapel half buried in the desert. Its bell tower leaned slightly, its door half rotted. Inside, the air was cool and still. Candles burned low on the altar, their flames trembling as if afraid to be seen. And there, at the far end of the room, stood a man. His back to her. "Maya," he said softly. Her knees weakened. The voice, quiet, careful, unmistakable. He turned. It was him, Alejandro Cruz. Alive. The left side of his face bore a new scar, and his arm hung stiff against his side, but the storm in his eyes was the same. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them carried everything that had been left unsaid. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. "I was." His voice was low, roughened by something more than pain, but death didn't want me yet. She stepped forward, her heart a drumbeat against her ribs. "Why did you send for me?" He looked down as if afraid of the answer. "Because you deserve the truth, and because I needed to see if you still would." Her throat tightened.
"See what?"
"That you're not afraid of what you became after me." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "You survived, Maya. You learned to fight. That's not an accident. That's what I wanted for you." She laughed bitterly. "You call that protection? You turned me into someone who can't sleep without checking for shadows." "You call it fear," he said quietly. "I call it strength." The anger she'd been holding broke free. "You left me with nothing. You walked into that storm and made me believe you were dead." He reached out, hesitated, then let his hand fall. "If I hadn't, they would have hunted you. My death bought you silence, and now?" He met her gaze. "Now silence has turned into loneliness." Her breath trembled. "So what, you want forgiveness?" "No," he said. "I want to give you what's left of my soul before it disappears again." He stepped closer until the space between them vanished, his presence filling the room like heat. "They're rebuilding the cartel. Not the Herreras, the worse men, smarter. They'll come for me again. I can't run anymore." Her voice broke. "Then let me stay." He shook his head slowly. "If you stay, you burn with me." She met his gaze with a quiet, terrible calm. "Then light the match." The air shifted. The candles flickered. Alejandro cupped her face in his hands, his fingers trembling against her skin. I don't deserve you. I don't care. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers. Hesitant at first, then desperate, like a drowning man remembering how to breathe. For a moment, there was no cartel, no ghosts, no past. Only the taste of rain that still lingered between them, even in the dry desert air. When he finally pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. If I die this time, he whispered, don't cry for me. She smiled through tears. You already told me? I only cry for you. 2 weeks later, the chapel burned. The newspapers called it an electrical fire. Locals whispered about figures seen leaving before dawn. A woman and a man limping, heading east. No bodies were found. In a small border town near Santa Fe, a cafe opened a month later. It was quiet, simple, painted in white and desert gold. The sign above the door read El Lamento, the lament. Behind the counter, Maya served coffee with a faint smile, her eyes calm but untamed. Sometimes at sunset, a man would sit at the far corner table, tall, dark-haired, with a limp in his left leg. They rarely spoke in public, but when their eyes met, something passed between them, a language older than words, built on storms and forgiveness. Outside, thunder would roll across the horizon, soft and distant. And as the first drops of rain began to fall, Maya would close her eyes, her lips curving faintly, hearing his voice in the rhythm of it all. From now on, you cry only for me. But she didn't cry anymore. She smiled instead, because the rain had finally found its peace.